one interesting thing that happened. My weekend would usually be going out and partying. Why the hell is it Monday back again?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our podcast series. Today, we're joined by Kelvin Dias, who is a veteran in the finance industry, and he comes with more than 2 decades of experience. He specializes in corporate banking and product development, risk, and operations management. Come join us as he talks to us about his insights and experiences in the finance industry. Hello, Kelvin. How are you today?
Good morning. Doing well. How's your morning been?
Stressful. I was preparing for the podcast. So I want to start with first understanding why did you want to come to our podcast?
It's my first experience with the podcast. I realized that change is inevitable. Everywhere you go around, there are new things that come into the market. And I think everyone needs a means to kind of network with people. This is an excellent means to network with people through my voice. Hopefully, able to do that successfully.
Okay. So for our audience, could you please start by detailing your profession, how many years you have in the industry, and how long have you been independent consulting for?
Okay. I worked for around 20 years, 2 decades in the industry. Been a part of the corporate banking industry. Moved from the operations management functions into change management. Looked at various digital transformation initiatives. My core strength lies in data. I love manipulating data, providing data visuals in terms of senior management presentations, and guide management, let's say, in terms of the KPIs that are being performed and any KRIs that need to be escalated out there. So I think I spent around 20 years there, realized that I've reached my peak, reached a sense of burnout, needed time out for myself. So took some time out for myself, explored travel, and came back realizing that I would like to be independent and get into something wherein I'd be associated to something and clear the project, finish the project, and then move on and look out for new challenges. So I think a new challenge is what interests me in terms of moving into, let's say, an independent consultant's role. And that keeps me satisfied in terms of looking around for things.
Okay. And we know that you've held senior management positions at different multinational banks. So can you compare your experiences at the different institutions you worked for, and how has that changed or framed your approach to banking?
I think I worked with three organizations primarily. Fortunately, I've been able to work with an APAC-based organization, an EMEA-based organization, and a US-based organization. They're different cultures to deal with, to begin with. APAC works in a different manner compared to the US. US is a little more aggressive in terms of performance. Everything needed to be delivered yesterday in terms of the US work culture. I think a mixture of all these three cultures within myself is something that I've been able to use effectively to, let's say, institutionalize in something that I do in today's day. The experience which I carry, let's say, even interacting with all those people, helps me today when I look at it from the perspective that I need to deal with a particular client and I need to adapt to a client in a particular manner. So I think adaptability comes into play once you're looking into independent consultancy, because you're starting with a project, you have a time frame, and you'll probably end at a particular point of time. The client needs to be understood in terms of the network that you've developed, and once you've developed that network with the client, if you're able to adapt to the client, then you're able to successfully deliver, and that's what matters at the end of the day.
Okay. You've touched a little bit upon why you wanted to start independent consulting. So what, apart from, say, dealing with, diversified clients, and I also know that you're very passionate about travel, cooking, singing, cooking, was I correct?
Sure.
Yes. So what exactly made you pivot to independent consulting? Was it a combination of all of these factors, or was there one trigger that led you to believe that I can be better off independently?
I think it was very situational. I went through something wherein I needed to take a break. And once I was getting back into the industry, there is a lot of competition in the market. So you look out for alternate avenues. In terms of, let's say that since I put in so many years in the market, it does become a little difficult against the competition to kind of knock off the competition. This does provide an alternative avenue wherein you are by yourself, you are judged on your own merits, you are judged on your own performance, and you are responsible for the success that you can drive for yourself. This entrepreneurial approach that it gets into independent consulting is something that made me inclined towards getting towards, let's say, consulting.
And was it difficult for you to transition to independent consulting?
I don't really think it was difficult to transition towards independent consulting because I think I've been doing the same thing that I've been doing before. It's just that as of today's day, let's say when I look at it in a longitudinal perspective, I have a time frame by which I need to deal with. I know that a project starts on a particular day, project ends on a particular day. I know that something might get extended to a particular point of time. But what also keeps me on my toes is that I need to look out for a new project once this project gets done.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is one thing that some of the independents I've spoken to have mentioned.
Right.
One is that seasoned professionals do find it difficult to transition to freelancing because you've gone away from a structure, that is the corporate structure, and now you're completely by yourself, where you probably have to take up a lot more of the admin and the sales work by yourself.
Absolutely.
So is this difficult to manage, or do you think freelancing requires a certain level of expertise with, managing your own things by yourself before you actually venture into it?
So it all depends on how your work career has been. I think in my experience, I've been a person who's never said no to an admin-related job. I think I've got appreciated for one day with my boss on video camera if I have to share an experience. He was in the US, he was looking out at me. We were in Bombay. Bangalore was almost getting shut down for like 3 days. We had to rush people from Bangalore into Bombay. And he's seen me lifting up PCs and setting up PCs out there, which was not really a part of my roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
But I knew that if I don't do that by, let's say, 2 a.m. in the morning, then my team doesn't come here and start working immediately. And we spend a lot of time and effort just to get them into the office and then try to start working. So it boils down to you as an individual. If you look at an admin related activity as a petty activity, or you look at it in the broad picture and say that it's in favor of my organization, and if I need to step down and do that, I will do that. Considering this kind of attitude that I do carry, I've never found that an issue with consulting. Yes, there are more possibilities of you stepping into admin related activities whilst you're doing consulting, but I think if you're used to doing that, then you don't really mind it. But maybe yes, that's all. It's all, let's say, a matter of attitude, your attitude that you carry.
Correct. And what we've understood from talking is that independent consulting is all about juggling multiple things at the same time.
True.
Have you ever dealt with, say, a scenario where you found it extremely tough to manage, say, the project, the admin stuff, sales, getting your pipeline in check? Was it ever a challenge for you?
So I was on one of these supply chain logistics projects, and out there, the number of people whom I was interacting was going on changing. I never had one individual who would kind of, be the point of contact which I could get to. We were driven against time. We needed some things to be delivered from X location to Y location. At one point in time came a point when we said that I need to have somebody whom I can deal with for every single thing. The organization said that they cannot have someone who can specifically come in there. So effectively at that point in time, I told them that if you do not give me some individual right now, then you do not expect the TAT to be met as such. They did have a meeting, a discussion at the end, and they realized that it was in their best interest that they have an individual who does step in and who does look at it from an organization's perspective, rather than me dealing with 20 people around the globe and each of these 20 not understanding what the other 19 have said. Funneling this information through that one individual helped in terms of delivery. Yes, there was a delay at the end of it, but the delay was a negligible delay. But at the end of it, we ended up on a successful note.
So what I'm understanding is that you've mostly relied on communication to refine things for yourself or the processes for yourself. Do you think other independents can use just communication, or do they need tools that are, AI tools to track how many hours they're giving to a client, to manage their invoices? Do you think that's required, or can someone do away with it?
I think collaboration and communication are the most important things to begin with. Obviously, you need to have a structure around the collaboration and communication that happens. And yes, tools come into place in terms of navigating and maintaining and auditing and tracking these pieces of information. At the end of the day, when you're performing as an individual consultant, you have to have, let's say, a rating based mechanism to say that this is the amount of time that you've spent, this is the amount of productive and unproductive time as well that you've spent. If you're able to quantify the unproductive time, which was not really required in the project, getting back to the admin related work, then I think you can have a word with the partners that you're dealing with, and justify it to them so that at least whilst this is being done on this project, this doesn't be repeated on the next project.
Okay. So now I want to understand, you've spent 2 decades in the same industry. How have you seen banking as an industry change?
Banking has changed aggressively. I was part of the securities market. So let's say when I joined the market, it was a T+5 settlement cycle, which meant that if you intend to buy something today and you go and you put in a trade in the market today, then you would ideally get the stock or the payment would go out from your account, let's say after around 7 to 10 calendar days, which includes the Saturday, Sunday in the middle. Again, as India will have it, if you have many holidays in the middle, then you would probably have 10 to 12
Yeah.
days to see that stock which has come into your account. Today, we are on a T+0 market settlement, which means that whilst we venture out and put our stock or put our money in that stock, we could receive the stock by today end of day, and the money will move out from my account today end of day. I think in the past 20 years, things have moved from, let's say, a check-based mechanism into a card-based mechanism, into digital currency, and then from digital currency more into UPI. This platform of UPI helps people churn out money and churn out returns on their money on a much faster basis. This all has happened primarily through digitization. That's basically the transformation journey that the country has gone through. Every other country has their own transformation journey, but I guess India stands ahead in terms of the transformation journey, especially post 2017. And that's probably why India's got pivoted into number 4, if I'm not wrong, in terms of the number of economy, in terms of the world economy strength.
Okay, I haven't
I
checked it.
think it's on 4, it's on 5, or else we're on 5 heading towards 4. I think the next one is Japan, which we need to overtake.
Okay. Similar to this, how has banking as an industry been receptive to the concept of hiring freelance or independent talent? Were they not as receptive before, or is this a more of a recent change that they've seen?
So I think in my experience, there have always been people who've worked on an independent basis with a bank, let's say in India. My previous organizations, which were European and American-based organizations, they did have people who would work on a time frame basis. Yes, there would be more of admin-related and straightforward project management-related jobs, but I think it was the organization also that chose to do that because they were venturing out to fetch people who were not on the rolls, and they wanted to get that level of comfort that what they're doing is indeed correct. Uh, Later on, post 2015-16, if I'm not wrong, that's when people started coming in for role-specific items, that is problem-solving related items. Until then, it was usually just try and test in terms of whether we're able to fit in a person into the organization. Effectively, most organizations would absorb the individual after a period of 1 year. But now it's not really necessary. You might just work on a project with them and you might part ways after the project is done. And in case if they have another project in future, they would probably approach you. Digitization agendas are big in every single organization. I was working with a CLM-based organization, and we were looking at scaling from CLM into CRM, that is client lifecycle management, into client relationship management. We could afford to do something of this sort because we were an organization of scale wherein we needed to use the same solutions that we prepared in CLM and move them towards CRM. Uh, So effectively, you'd see people coming in CLM, but taking on a new role after a point of time. So it's very imperative on the client to discuss and decide in terms of whether they want to have you for a particular time frame, or they want to extend that, or they want to reach out to you in future again.
Okay.
Again, this is all driven by you as an individual in terms of your experience that you've given to them. So if you as an individual are persistent in terms of a quality-based experience that you're giving out to them, they will come back to you.
So, in terms of, say, your experience with banks as an independent, say, for example, you have been onboarded for a 6-month project, and accordingly, you've built a pipeline post the 6-month mark. And in case they decide to extend your contract, how do you then manage your pipeline?
So it's all about now, like you said, the automated tools. If you have an automated tool in place in terms of tracking how much of project you have, how much of effort you require to deliver that project, if you're able to quantify that at your end, you know whether you can land up extending that project and dealing with multiple agencies. If not, then in that case, you might have to give them a time frame saying that I need to be released for X time frame so that I can complete this project and get back. So it's all a sense of negotiation with your client. If you're able to negotiate the current workload that you have as an individual with your client and justify that to them, maybe if that's required, then in that case you can always play on a timeline. Again, it depends on the brevity of delivery that they have on their project. If they have, let's say, a priority on their project which needs to be delivered on a particular point of time, and you cannot come in and step in at that point in time, then in that case you might have to think of losing that client for that point in time. But it's all very situational. You as an individual will have to take that call of judgment and exercise it accordingly based on their priority and your priorities both.
Okay. And what kind of trends and projects are currently prominent in banking? And if today someone, say a banking expert, wants to go independent, what kind of projects can they expect?
I think everyone in banking now is moving towards engineering rather than actually banking being a service. So effectively, like the term that we'd coined, I don't know if it's really very prominent, but it is getting prominent now, was that we use banking as a service, which is now BaaS. So effectively, banking as a service is a case wherein, let's say you as a client do not expect, you as a service provider do not expect your client to come and experience the service from you. You set up a sense of service with them through an integration of technological means by which they can easily access the service. So it's all about exception management, let's say, rather than actually management. You deal with exceptions, which is usually 5% of exceptions, never 95% of just volume. And that's where banks are moving today in terms of their goals and objectives for the day.
Okay, and that's where most of the projects are for independence as well.
Yes.
Okay, and in terms of challenges, so this is a twofold question. One is I want to understand from your experience what have been the operational or the regulatory challenges that the banks are posing, and then I want you to talk about your own challenges that you faced as an independent with regards to the new changes happening.
So I was working with one of the international banks, and the international bank operating in India had, let's say, a challenge of KYC. They had come under the purview of one of the regulatory authorities in India, and they were risking their license in India. So effectively, my job over there was to go ahead and create a program which would bifurcate all clients based on their risk rating, decide which client needs to be picked up on priority, create tranche level KYC operational tranches so that you can execute tranches. We would go and allocate each KYC to every single staff down there. We had an AFC, which would be the client-facing team, which would land up looking at any sort of client-related issues. Effectively, this collaboration between the client servicing individual who is sitting at a foreign location dealing with the client and the operational staff who's looking at re-verifying the KYC needed to be synced and in place. This project meant that on an ongoing basis, every tranche was reported in case if we're able to finish the tranche by a particular date. If we're not able to finish it, then justify the reasons. This was during COVID. Justify those reasons, and if you're able to justify those reasons, either add additional resources to prioritize those, or else take an exception approval and extend the deadline and delivery. This is one thing that, to quote to your previous question before, in 20 years, things have changed as well again in the bank, because 20 years back, it was never the case wherein we would go ahead and tell a client that we can't execute this by a particular point of time.
Okay.
They are a little more empathetic now, wherein we do go ahead and justify it with a particular plan in place and say that if not X date, then X plus Y dates is by when we would deliver. And the clients do understand this. There's a little more sense of empathy that has come into the market in terms of delivery.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were there any challenges you faced when you were delivering on this project?
Absolutely, always.
What kind?
People.
Okay.
To begin with, that's where collaboration comes into place,
Yes.
right? That's where you need to be adaptive, that if I'm talking to X, Y, Z, I can't use the strategy between X and Z, because that individual is now going to understand the same thing that I'm explaining to person Z. So I was a product owner for one of the digital solutions in one of the previous organizations, and it meant dealing with almost around 1,500 people across the globe.
Oh my God.
At the point, at the ground level, meant reaching out to people right in Tokyo and in Dallas at one point of time during the day, training them on the product that was being delivered, advising them that these are the requirements that have been gathered, these are the solutions that have been in place, learning the solution that is being implemented and teaching it down to them, troubleshooting in case of any issues with all of them. So that project was one hell of a crazy project, because everyone had their own ways of saying that it's a new thing. I don't want to go ahead and do this. But I had to be like, this is an objective, which is an organizational objective. We're working towards something. I know that you might not be able to understand what we're working towards, but you have to have faith in me. And, I had to play my cards accordingly with all of them, and then say that just try doing it for one day and coax them into it. Assure them that, let's say, I'm always there. So in case if you do have any issues in terms of performance of the solution that has been provided, then in that case you can always reach out to me. In case if I'm not there, then there's an XYZ contact whom you can reach out to get this clarification out there. I think that was one of the most challenging projects that we looked at when, in terms of delivery, in terms of collaboration, and in terms of communication with people out there.
So you mentioned collaboration as a challenge, I think twice, as we've spoken. Do you think it's because, okay, you can tell me, you can give me a comparison between how collaboration was when you were a permanent employee, and has that changed because they perceive you differently? They would perceive you as someone who's not a part of the organization if you're an independent. So can you compare the two experiences basis collaboration?
So what I look at is that every single organization was working in a very functional manner, let's say. So they were all working towards their functional goal. They were never working that if there are 10 different functions in the organization which actually make the end organization, all these 10 different functions would never work in a sync together with each other. That's where collaboration comes into place, that it's not just my function that needs to collaborate individually with all of them within the function and then be a standout against the remaining 9. It's about we all 10 coming in together and then performing for the end goal, which is the organization's goal to be in place. Like I said, I had around 1,500 people on this particular project. The team that I looked at was only around 300 to 400 people. We decided to then scale this project because my team performed successfully. We scaled this project and then included the other functions. Because we included the other functions, we could land up creating a client servicing, let's say, automation tool for the entire organization using this.
But was it different? Like you as a permanent employee, you as an independent, has the experience been different?
I think the experience still remains the same because you do have challenges in terms of people. You do have challenges in terms of collaborating with people. So the challenges still remain the same. I think what is more important is that you maintain your patience and you keep that dignity and say that, okay, fine, there is an individual who has a problem. I am the person
Yeah.
who will solve their problem.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and keep doing that on a cyclical basis.
Okay, understood. So Kelvin, we met at a networking event which we hosted. So I want to understand what are the avenues that independents can explore. One is for networking and two for upskilling themselves, especially with banking. What are the platforms someone can use to keep up with the changes that are rapidly happening today?
I think it's all very specific to the field in banking that you belong to. So you first need to understand which function you belong to. In my case, I am a jack of all trades. I have moved from the sub-custody function to the prime brokerage, to the fund of fund services, to managing KYC and managing strategy. So it's very difficult to kind of keep abreast with every single change that is happening in the market. In my case, I realized that my core is my skill set, so I would go in the direction of my skill set rather than the direction of the product.
Okay.
Effectively, if I had an individual who was looking at, let's say, KYC, then in that case, I would suggest to them that you'll end up going into KYC, understand the regulations that are coming up, regulations that are being guided, the guidelines that are coming up from the regulatory bodies, and effectively keep abreast with the regulatory changes that are happening out there. In my case, I think I look at more skill set based avenues. So I'd use YouTube, I'd use Google to land up learning. If there are any other free mediums, I go ahead and I just keep on looking at them and try and learn from there. I think with me, I like new solutions which come into the market. So I look at Tableau, Acceptor, Alteryx, these kind of solutions, which I think will stay for another 10 years or so. And obviously, then when we move from Web 3 to Web 4, that's when everything will again change.
Yeah.
And then it's a continuous cycle wherein you keep learning and relearning.
Yes. But how do you find networking events? It could be just for banking experts, it could be for independents. How exactly do you come across such events?
Outsize just happened, and I don't really remember as to how outsize happened to begin with. I mean, I get a little more categorical with outsize. I think it was just something that I seen on Instagram. I got interested and I got inclined towards it. It was more of a behind the computer scenario, but I think the event that you all did organize a couple of weeks back, that helped in terms of breaking the ice and breaking that barrier of just sitting down there and not being able to interact in person with someone. And here we are today, face to face with each other, recording this.
I want to delve deeper into the resources that's out there for independence. So there's like a ton of resources out there because we're in marketing. We know the kind of content that's already out there. So it's very difficult to differentiate, okay, is this for seasoned professionals or is this for someone who's just starting out? Have you found these resources useful, say, first of all, to transition from permanent to independent, and second, to secure your first client? So were these resources helpful to you?
See, learning is something that becomes a part of you as an individual. Effectively, the scope of learning can keep expanding. Resources that I found useful are usually Google because I'm a solutions person. I would think that if there is a problem, there is a solution, and it's not a first time problem that somebody's found in the world. There's probably a solution to it somewhere or the other. So I would just formulate my problem in specific keywords, put them across on Google, and get multiple solutions. Spend that time to look at those solutions, understand that, see whether that solution can be catering towards the problem that I have, and then accordingly go ahead with it. In terms of training materials, training also goes in the same manner. You do have to spend a little bit of time in terms of understanding that this training does not suit me, and don't be too hard on yourself that you've lost that time. That's fine. Eventually, somewhere around in life, you will realize that whatever you've learned does help you somewhere or the other.
Correct.
So no learning is just time lost. It's just maybe an investment. It's how you look at it.
Okay, so a lot of these resources talk about, you should have a financial safety net. You should really focus on networking before you transition. You should have a runway of projects before you actually make this transition. How exactly did you secure your first client?
So I think I like to put in a small point here before telling about how do I secure my first client. Uh, I think when I decided to quit my profile and move into something of this sort, I had to do an analysis of let's say how long can I sustain if I do not have anything in hand. So consider the worst come scenario, evaluate that worst come scenario. Fortunately, I think so. In my case, I did look at an income, and then after looking at income, always looked at how much I can save and how much I can spend.
Okay.
Then that saving goes into a sort of an investment, which in today's day gives me that faith that I can decide to move out of a regular paying job and let's say move into something which is independent and be responsible for the income I make, or maybe a lull that I might have in my case.
Okay. So, Kelvin, how did you secure your first client?
I think it was a sense of networking. You get out there, you put it out on LinkedIn, you land up approaching your network. You have friends, you have family, you have community that you belong to. You go out to each of them and tell them that you're up to give out some work. I think you don't have to keep, let's say, a number in mind when you go about doing something. You always say that you have that skill set in hand, and you don't mind exchanging that skill set for the experience that you get in terms of the project that you're going to be dealing with. This project that I got was, let's say, through close associates of mine who trusted the fact that I could deliver something of this sort. And it was a logistic-based project. It was not something which was related to banking, but it did require a lot of collaboration and communication on the project. And I think it's the network that did help me in terms of securing that first project there.
Would you say that it's actually challenging to secure that first client, and probably building a pipeline after that would be easier?
I think building a pipeline is a little more difficult than actually securing your first.
Okay.
Because in my experience, let's say, I had close people to me who came ahead and said, okay, let's go ahead and do this. And that is the project that does define your career path ahead.
Okay.
In terms of you creating a name in the market and expanding out of banking maybe into other projects as well, considering the fact that you can use the same skill set.
Okay. One thing we've heard as to why people transition to freelancing is to seek better work-life balance, to say probably travel, and travel is something that you're passionate about, I would say. So I want to understand whether traveling has enabled you to give you a different perspective, a different worldview of your professional life.
I think when I was working on a 5-day basis. My weekend would usually be going out and partying, getting wasted, and then coming back on Monday and thinking, why the hell is it Monday back again? Uh, I think with times changing since then to now, you can land up keeping yourself anywhere around the world, especially post-COVID. Everyone's jumping onto that bandwagon of saying that, okay, fine, you can work from anywhere and at any point of time. It does give you that flexibility. Travel just gets infused into it because you get that flexibility of being
Yeah.
an individual consultant. So effectively, yeah, travel does help me out in terms of de-stressing, in terms of going and seeing other places, maybe if it calls for it late in the night, because I am quite a night person. And yeah, then also doing your work during the day and earning some money.
And say balancing travel and work, does that first of all help with the emotional state that you're in, and secondly with productivity, being more efficient when you're actually working, when you actually have a very balanced life?
I think every individual does have a state of mentality wherein, in case if they continuously do something, there would be a sense of tiredness in your body and your mind too. Your mind does need an avenue to break out and see something new. So effectively, let's say today, if I work in office, tomorrow I work at home. That is also a change from the regular style of working. And whilst you're communicating, collaborating, talking to so many people, making so many decisions, making so many deliveries, trying to tackle a deadline and trying to tackle a problem, you need that space to, let's say, break out. The choice is dependent on you in terms of how you choose to break out. If you decide to break out through travel, which is my means of, let's say, of composure that I get in my mind, then so be it. many other people do opt for travel as that sense of balance between their job and their work.
Yeah.
It's up to you as an individual to choose what makes you happy. And I think you need to understand that happy space that you get. And with me, it's my happy space is travel. So
Okay.
effectively, I think I've made that choice there.
Okay, and what has been your favorite travel memory?
Favorite travel memory is an individual. It was one interesting thing that happened. I traveled from an island which was 40 nautical miles away from land mass in the South China Sea to a place called Kampot, which was not on my travel itinerary, but I still tried to figure out a way, and I traveled there. I was sitting out there, and this was just after I had quit my job. I met an elderly gentleman who was like 65 years old. He was having his soup, and I asked him, "What are you doing? Are you traveling by yourself?" And he says, "Yes, I am." And he says, "Many people just ask me, 'Are you traveling alone?' But you said, 'Are you traveling by yourself?'" And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's how I say it." And he's like, "No, that's a sense of recognition you give to yourself, a reward that you give to yourself by acknowledging yourself as myself and not traveling alone." It's a very negative connotation of saying that you're traveling alone vis-a-vis traveling by yourself, because you're giving yourself more importance there. The individual gave me a sense of perspective in terms of how to appreciate myself, let's say, because I was going through a lull in terms of realizing that I've not been able to perform, maybe at work, maybe at home, maybe with too many things together. But you suddenly get this person who drives that flame back into you. And it might be something as simple as this. You saying something by like this, and he gives you insight into
Yeah.
yourself sitting there. And I think that's been my game-changing memory, which just happened. It was not something which was planned as well. It was just something which was off the grid, not on my planned itinerary. Moving out and going there to one place and meeting an individual who makes you feel that good, when I can come and share that memory today with you guys.
I think that's really beautiful, and also it makes you realize the way you phrase your sentences can actually have either a very profound meaning, or it can have a very negative
Absolutely,
meaning.
absolutely.
Like, even I hadn't thought about, okay, if someone says that you're traveling alone, it can be said in a negative way, because I also love traveling by myself, not alone. And I've been posed with this question way too many times, because solo female traveler is not something people can wrap their head around. But that's actually lovely. And what has been your favorite destination so far?
Favorite destination so far, I think, was Budapest. Budapest was a fun destination because there are hot water springs and baths. It was like this cold winter time that I'd been there, and while you're out there in the cold, you can land up going and having fun in the saunas. You can land up going and having fun in those baths out there. You have a sort of a club and party environment that gets created there, which is, yeah, I think something that lets me let my hair down and,
Yeah.
let's say, party well, headbang sometimes.
We should get a shot of that.
No, I think when I had my long hair, that was a different thing, but not today.
You had long hair
Yeah,
previously.
I did.
Oh.
And red colored.
When was this?
This is 2006, 2007. I think before we had John Abraham coming in Dhoom, I had this long hair which would probably touch my shoulder and was colored red.
Wow. Were you the kind to maintain your hair properly?
I don't think I could maintain my hair properly. Hats off to you all for trying to maintain your hair, still being able to maintain it. But I think I gave up. And I said, let me just chop it off.
So, one thing that I've also learned from my travel experience is that it exposes you to very diverse environments.
True.
It forces you to become adaptable to that environment, and then, because there's no other way out, you're, say, in a homestay in a different state and a different village, you can't be all snobby and ask for exactly what you want. Has this adaptability been instrumental in your professional life as well, that you've learned through travel?
I think yes, it has, because and like I said initially in part of one of our discussions, when I said that you don't really need to bother about doing admin work. I think I come with that attitude,
Yeah.
and I really don't mind things, and I like small things in life, let's say. So going off to this one village in Tawan, which is in Vietnam, we were living in this place which was with a family. They had their own kids, they had their elderly person at home, and the core family was the husband and wife out there. They had this small room which was carved out for us, and they had this bathroom which had stones and not tiles.
Okay.
And the whole rustic, earthy look and feel to that whole place is something that I probably wouldn't have experienced if I had chosen to go and stay, let's say, in a nice 4-star or 5-star Avenue hotel. The food was extremely local. I was pretty surprised by the fact that they, being Vietnamese, were able to cater towards European food and churn out some really good European food as well.
Okay.
They did have a nice wine bar as well. So in the night when it was just getting super cold, we went out and we had a bottle of wine and sitting out with them, talking to them, understanding their stories, how they wanted to navigate and network around the world, and ensure that they run their own shop as well. This was a place that had amazing rice fields besides it, and it had glorious views of these mountains. If I have to compare it to India, it might be something like a Dalhousie and let's say something of Kerala mixed together, which was a
Okay.
beautiful sight there.
So you mix mountains and a coastal area.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think I
interesting.
tend to find places like that, which is much more interesting.
Okay.
I was traveling with a friend of mine who is into fashion design, and we went out for a trek. And whilst we were heading out, whilst we were on the trek, he found this lady who would probably be around 80 years old, and she had hand embroidered a garment which was literally, let's say, almost a meter by a meter long.
Okay.
And he managed to buy that from her. One, yes, really cheap, but but he really appreciated the fact that she had spent maybe 3 or 4 years in terms of making that garment, because she had to kind of stitch each and every
Yeah.
color. Maybe after this, I'll just show you a video of it and show
Yeah.
you in terms of what that cloth is. It's a beautiful cloth that he fetched. He doesn't want to sell it off. He's
I mean, I
kept it
think he
with him.
shouldn't.
He's kept it with him. He's never going to sell it off, is what he says. I mean, he's bought a lot of other materials. We came back with, I think we had baggage of 30 kgs, but we came back with 49 kgs. So he's paid extra baggage allowance.
Okay.
So I think he's not going to be waving off this cloth. This cloth is going to probably remain with him till his days.
Yeah. So if you don't mind sharing, you told me that you will not be available, say, for the next 1 or 2 weeks because you're
True,
traveling.
true.
If you don't mind sharing, where exactly are you going?
Not a really fancy trip down to Goa,
Okay.
but it's again something which is linked with the full moon. The energies of spiritual energies tend to increase during the full moon.
Yeah.
So I'm just going there by myself, spending some time out there, maybe meeting up with some friends, maybe meeting up with some family as well. Also the inclination towards going to Goa is going and having some mangoes out there. Mangoes is something which
Mangoes
is a
in Goa?
delicacy. Yes, mangoes in Goa. We have the King Alfonso, which is called the Mankurad in Goa.
Okay.
You get that in the market. I tend to smell the fragrance of each of my mangoes and relate that smell to the smell of mangoes that I've had at my granny's place while I was growing
Oh.
up. So there's a sense of getting back into the past and
Okay.
experiencing that by going and fetching my mangoes and probably having them whilst I'm in Goa.
So are you a regular solo traveler and do you like despise going with people, or what's
Not
this?
at all.
What's this
I'm a
thing?
pretty social person, let's say. I don't mind traveling to a place by myself. But once I'm there, then I think I can land up socializing with people around there.
Okay.
The same thing happened to me when I moved off from here and I went off to Cambodia and Thailand. I traveled by myself. No, actually, I did travel with a friend. I traveled with a friend on one leg of the Cambodia trip. And he came back after 4 days, and then I took over from there. And that was an itinerary which I was just planning out while the day passes, talking to people, figuring out what's a good place to go to. They suggested this place called Korong Samlem.
Okay.
And I went off into that island. That's a smaller island. It's a more peaceful island, and there's a sister island of Korong Somlem, which is called Korong, which is a party destination. And I was not in the mood of partying at that point of time because I was more into that mode of trying to spiritually find myself and find my ground. So I chose not to go to Korong while I was completely inclined to go to Korong and waste myself there. But yeah, I decided Korong Samlem. It was a fun experience out there. We learned that something that we as individuals here do not get to experience is what people could. So we had people who were around 18 or 19 who would travel on their flights, come down to the place. The place that we were staying at was a hostel. The hostel would have an individual who's sitting on the counter. That person on the counter never was from there. That person was a traveler who would come and exchange hours against work that he'd do there.
Okay.
In exchange of those hours that he'd do there, he would get, let's say, a bed, he would get some drinks, and he could probably invite a friend to play games with him because they had this massive TV out there where we would land up playing video games.
This is actually happening now, but in exchange for staying there, you have to shoot content for them.
Yeah, that's actually happening now, but I think this is something that I experienced outside in 2018.
Okay.
So yeah, these are things that coming into the market and then come into business a little later. But if you're able to experience these experiences and get them into business and make them a business strategy or a business model, then in that case, you've learned a lot from your travel and you're able to monetize your travel eventually.
Yes. So how you found this spot? Because you spoke to people, I'm assuming that you're not much of a planner when you go on trips.
No, I'm more impromptu rather than a planner. I think I used to be a planner, and I realized that I'm planned 10 items. I have done 3. I can't do 7. And I'd come back and I'd be like in that FOMO of saying that I've not done 7. I need to go back. I realized that if I've done 3, I need to be satiated that I've done those 3 and I've done those 3 to my whole ability of seeing, experiencing, because I am quite a slow paced traveler as well.
Okay.
I don't like to jump around and hop around
Yeah.
cities. I realized that about myself. That's something that you'll tend to realize only after going through it. And that's where you acknowledge that is you, and that is how you would choose to go around. I do have friends who'd probably want to do 10 days and 10 days do 4 destinations. You ask me to do that, I can't. I don't think I can do that anymore. So I think I'd rather choose people who'd be in that particular destination, go and meet them up around there and say, okay, fine, let's go out somewhere and then go around.
I think it also depends on where you are in your travel journey. So I also started off with like a proper list. So if I'm going to Himachal, I need to check off 10 places that I have to actually see. Come back extremely tired. Didn't actually seem like a vacation. And now I'm more of a person, like if I go to a homestay in Himachal, I'm just gonna chill with them, understand their culture, probably look at their apple farms. So I feel like it also probably depends on where you are in your travel journey.
Listening to birds on an apple farm is quite an experience. If you've
I will
not
do
done
it.
that, you should do that the next time.
I'm going in the next week only, so I'm gonna try this.
And if you're taking binoculars, then you can actually see them and then click some amazing pictures of the birds as well.
So I think it's time to wrap up this conversation. I want you to answer this one last question, which is, what advice would you give to both professionals and independents in general about, say, foraying into independent and create a balance like you have already?
I think go for it. You just look at it from the perspective that whilst you're entering into an independent avenue, you are more driven by let's say by your savings to begin with. You ensure that you can sustain for a particular point of time. Consider the worst come scenario. Consider 5 years as the time frame that you don't have anything in hand, and do you have wealth that can support you for all your expenses for 5 years to begin with. Check if you need to land up adjusting your lifestyle to manage yourself for those 5 years in case if you can't. whilst you start off on this journey of independent consulting, you will realize that there are times that everything doesn't go into your favor. Don't get disheartened by that. Keep up that strength of ensuring that you keep fighting back again and standing there and let's say going and negotiating with people and getting things out of them. It is a challenging, competitive avenue to be in. It is not a fixed reward that you will get every single month. So be averse of it. That you might not really keep on getting your fixed reward every single month, and that's where there could be some changes in lifestyle that you do need to maintain. Whilst all that's said and done, once you're out there and you start seeing your rewards, you'll see that your rewards are in multiples of what you probably had. And it also gives you that balance of time and space wherein you do able to make time for yourself and others. You are able to make time for yourself moving out of the situation that you are and go and catering to any situation from anywhere else in the form of travel that I choose. So effectively, yes, go ahead, take the leap, take the leap of faith and move around. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Kelvin, for joining
Thank you.
us today. It was a lovely, lovely conversation.
Lovely speaking to you too.